Welcome to Not Financial Advice. I'm your host, Spencer Montgomery. Now, I've got some pretty exciting developments that have happened over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, and the secret is in gold. I've talked a lot about the US dollar index, I've talked about S&P and the NASDAQ, but today the secret to Bitcoin's future is in the price of gold. So let's look at what gold is doing. All right, so we've got the price of gold pulled up, the gold chart. Let's zoom out. I've got lots of lines. Maybe we can delete some of those. We are at $2,048 for 1 ounce of gold. Now, the thing that's interesting here is look at where the candlestick is. We're looking at each candlestick is 1 week. And so you look at this candle right here and you look at to see where has other candlesticks closed. And we get some wicks, meaning just some lines that go up a little bit higher. But every time the candles close below where we're at right now. So if we go back to August of 2020, that's 3 years ago. The price of gold came up to $2,040. It ended up closing at $2,038. And if we close this week above 2,040, it will mean that the close for the week for the price of gold will be higher than it has ever been. So let's now zoom out and look at the chart of what has happened over the last couple years. What is forming is what is called a cup and handle, where we have this dip that lasted from 2012. We finally broke back to those same levels in 2020. We got up to 2,040, which I mentioned, and then the price had fallen back down, especially in 2022. And we've been oscillating between the price of about 1,800 to 2,000. If we break up to new highs and get above $2,072, like we're just a couple, like 0.5% away of getting to all-time highs in gold. The price of gold is expected to really catapult. It could increase by 20, 30, even 50%, causing the price of gold to go up to nearly $3,000 in the next 3 to 6 months. What does that have to do with Bitcoin? So let's go over to this chart where it tracks the price of gold to the price of Bitcoin. Let's zoom in here, see what we're looking at to the 1-day chart. And we're in this downtrend ever since the high in December of 2022. So we're a year away. It's basically been in a relatively straight downward trend, meaning that Bitcoin is outperforming gold. So this is important, right? When the chart goes up, that means gold is outperforming Bitcoin. When the chart goes down, Bitcoin's outperforming gold. So we just looked at gold's chart and we said, look at what's happening. We're creating an all-time high in gold. Gold could increase by 10, 20, 30%. And then this chart says, well, we're in a downward trend, meaning it looks like Bitcoin should continue to outperform gold. We expect a increase in gold by 30%. That means we could expect even more for Bitcoin. Even let's say that this chart just kind of goes flat, right? We're expecting the price doesn't go up, the price doesn't go down. We're just going to get a flat price action for this relationship between gold and Bitcoin. Well, again, I mentioned the gold chart is expecting a 30% increase. So, in order for this chart to go flat, Bitcoin would also have to increase by 30%. So right now, Bitcoin is around $40,000. A 30% increase would take us to above $50,000 in the next 3 or so months. I think I've said this before, but I'm very bullish on Bitcoin. I think that we see Bitcoin reaching near $80,000 by March. And so just looking at the gold chart just gives us another confirmation as to why we would expect a pretty significant move in the coming months. So now that we've done that, just want to kind of go over what's happening in the S&P and the NASDAQ and the US dollar index to just show what we can expect. Now we're looking at the S&P. And we want to just review these charts to ensure that everything is continuing to track that we would expect. So we've seen the S&P increase for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straight weeks. And we're coming up right against this trend line resistance that goes back to the top in January 2022. And this trend is formed by taking the tops from January 2022, the top that we saw in July, and now we're coming right up against that. If we can break through this, I think the S&P reaches all-time highs in the next month or two, which is, again, going to bode well for Bitcoin and other cryptos. The NASDAQ chart looks even better than the S&P. This is because we're seeing the mass majority of price increase in stocks is led by, you have Microsoft, you have NVIDIA, you have Google and Amazon. There's really, I think, 7 stocks that are doing the majority of the work to what accounts for the S&P rising, and all of those are in the NASDAQ as well. So that's why we're seeing some significant price increases in NASDAQ. Again, we are very close to all-time highs. I think less than 4%. Now, lastly, let's look at the US dollar index, and we have seen the US dollar index take a nosedive over the last 4 weeks. This has given a lot of tailwinds for the S&P, the NASDAQ, and the crypto and cryptocurrencies. So everything that we're seeing is going according to plan. I still think that we are definitely on track for they call it a Christmas rally, and then we can see continuation into the first quarter of 2024. So, like I've said over and over, I'm expecting $80,000 Bitcoin by March. I think S&P, NASDAQ also hits all-time highs. What happens after that is going to be a big question mark. We'll address it when that time comes. Thanks again for joining us on Not Financial Advice. We'll see you next time.